Hello, everybody. Welcome to Saturday's edition of Weekend Waypoints, D1 Baseball and SEC Extra. I'm your host, Joe Healy, here to take you through a kind of a classic SEC Friday night and get you ready for Saturday's action. I don't know about you, but last night to me kind of felt like an SEC Friday night of yore, if you will, in that, this year we haven't had a lot of pitchers duel Friday nights. I mean, some of it's due to pitcher injuries. Some of it's due to just the fact that it's a very offense focused game in college baseball right now. Um, all of those things kind of make it so that we haven't had a lot of those days where the scores are just really low. But last night I looked up at one point and every game was in the fifth inning or later, and no game had more than five total runs, with the exception of Ole Miss and Bama, and that's the second game of that series. So it's not really a Friday night for them, right? So it was just kind of a nice change of pace. So I really enjoyed that. We'll get into all of that here in just a minute, but first, have to remind you that all of our Saturday editions of Weekend Waypoints are brought to you by Plains Coffee Company. Always love talking about them on this show. A lot of good news when it comes to Plains Coffee Company. First, as I always remind you, it is a husband and wife team roasting beans in the heart of SEC country. Doesn't get any more local small business than that. There's also free shipping. Every order in the United States gets free shipping just right off the top. And if you use the code BASEBALL, which you can see scrolling there at the bottom of your screen, you get 10% off of your order. And finally, their beans are only roasted after you order them. You order it, they roast it that day, they get shipped out the next day. So your beans, your coffee beans, are as fresh as they could possibly be when they arrive at your doorstep. They've not been sitting on a shelf for, God knows how long. So you get fresh beans, you're supporting a local husband and wife business. You get free shipping, 10% off. What's not to love? If you don't care for coffee, they've got tea options as well. So if you're, you know, you and your significant other kind of disagree on the coffee versus tea debate, you can get a little bit of both at Plains Coffee Company. So I ask that you support the people who support us. Plains Coffee Company was the first folks to come on board with us here on the Weekend Waypoint show. So I appreciate them, and I would appreciate you supporting them along the way. All right, let's talk about the game of the day. There were a decent number of options here within the SEC. Could have gone a lot of different ways, but I'm going to go South Carolina 6, Kentucky 5 in 10 innings. A wild last couple of innings in particular in this game. It was just a close game all game long. Let me pull up the box score here. We can follow along. All right. So you can see from the line score here, if you could see it right here, the 1-1 game into the ninth inning. Kentucky scores 3 runs in the ninth inning, kind of in a very 2023 Kentucky kind of way. If we click on the scoring tab here, you can see that in the ninth inning, it was, they got 2 guys on. Mitchell Daly tried to sack bunt. Garrett Gainey, the pitcher, mishandled it. He reached. Then Ryan Nicholson singles through the left side. Could have, it could have been a play made by Lee Ellis at shortstop, but don't forget, we talked about this on Friday's show. Lee Ellis, freshman, in there for Will Tippett, not the everyday shortstop, couldn't come up with the ball cleanly. And then they get runs. Patrick Herrera scores a run on a safety squeeze. So a very 2023 Kentucky way of scoring runs. They bring in Johnny Hummel, who has been great for Kentucky this year. Opponents hitting under 100 against him. He's got a 3-run lead. You kind of figure okay, if there's any game he can lock down, it's this one. He gives up 3 solo home runs, and all of them were tattooed. He clearly didn't have his best stuff. All 3 home run pitches were kind of, middle. It looked like South Carolina was really on his curveball. That's kind of his go-to pitch, is he's got that, just downer curveball, and he was leaving it up. And South Carolina clearly was looking to attack that pitch when it was up. They took care of it. They tied it. Not to be outdone, Kentucky comes back in the 10th. Nick Lopez, 2-out RBI single. Okay, maybe all is well. Maybe Kentucky's still going to find a way to escape with a road victory. But then Blake Jackson comes back up again, his second home run in as many innings. This one, like a classic Founders Park home run that can happen. That ballpark can play small sometimes, and he just kind of flicks it the opposite way. And Evan Byers, the Kentucky pitcher, did that pitcher thing where he's pointing at the ball, but he pointed at it all the way out of the ballpark. And hits the railing right above the fence. So didn't get out by much, but got out by enough to be a walk-off home run. It's a big win for South Carolina, as we talked about on the Friday show. They're really looking for a series win against one of the, those top 4 teams in the SEC that, at least record-wise, have separated themselves. They get one here, they're on their way. I have a couple of other notes here. One is Ty Good was extremely effective for South Carolina. Really kind of saved this game for him. As you can see here, Roman Kimball only goes 3. His pitch count was kind of elevated. The numbers themselves aren't bad. 2 hits and 1 run. Could have been a lot worse, though. There was, some traffic. There was deep counts for Kentucky. But Ty Good comes in, and this line is even a little deceiving because the 2 runs were inherited runners scoring into his 6th inning of work. Probably got left in a batter or two too long, so the inherited runners end up scoring. But flatly, South Carolina does not win that game if Ty Good doesn't do what he does, because Trey Pooser, who also kind of scuffled early in the game, settled down, gave Kentucky, good innings, got him into the, I think he threw 7 or 8. Let me flip over, and 7. Yeah. They needed it. Like, they needed somebody who could go pitch for pitch, and Ty Good gave it to them. On the flip side, I'm starting to get a little concerned about the Kentucky bullpen. If Johnny Hummel, and look, this could be just a one-off, right? But if Johnny Hummel's not going to be the same guy that he was the first 10 weeks of the season, if maybe he's slowing down a little bit, whether it's that the book is out on him, whether it's that the innings load is starting to wear on him, although he's not throwing a ton of innings, but whatever it is, if he's not going to be quite the same guy, that's tough for them. But then you had some effective work here. Jackson Novy threw a good inning. Cameron O'Brien, again, gives up a run, but that's not totally indicative of how well he pitched coming in there after Hummel. But they bring in Evan Byers in a specific spot to face one batter, and he gives up a home run. We didn't see Travis Smith, but last weekend against Tennessee, the second time they used him, he was just not as effective. And I get it, that's Tennessee. Like, they're going to make a lot of pitchers look ineffective. But I say all that to say that this Kentucky bullpen has been really good for most of the season, and this was the biggest area of concern for the Wildcats coming into the season. Nick Mingione was not shy about telling you that, and you wonder if maybe it's starting to catch up to them a little bit. So now it's like, okay, do we believe that the bullpen, the way it was the first 10 weeks plus, is kind of the real deal, or are maybe they starting to see some regression to the mean here? Only time will tell, but that is starting to, from a Kentucky standpoint, that is starting to concern me a little bit. Big game tonight between the two. South Carolina looking to clinch that series win. That would be really big. Kentucky looking to fend off a second straight series loss in SEC play. All right, let me flip over. I will turn this screen share off. Let me flip over and look at some comments. We've got some waiting there. I have to flip them off while I'm talking. I've learned that in this show, that if I have the comments scrolling as I'm talking to you guys, I will get distracted by them. So I have to turn them off and address them kind of separately there. James Gillum, the weather on YouTube, the weather at South Carolina felt like we were playing in Lexington. Yeah, I kind of wondered that. Like, it didn't look pleasant. It just, it looked like there was kind of like just a heavy fog or mist over everything. It also looked like, by the way, I watched some of Coastal Carolina's game against Troy, because it started earlier than all the SEC games, and it looked the same down in Conway. So I think that was just kind of a thing that was happening on the Eastern Seaboard today or yesterday. Carl Dunn on YouTube, praise Tiny Baby Jesus, LSU won. I know it's Auburn, but I'm glad they have life. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. I mean, it was much needed. So yeah, it's a baby step, but like, that's kind of what you need if you're LSU, or baby steps. So yeah, certainly positive there. And we'll talk specifically about the pitching performance, because I do think there is something interesting there. Jeremy Scott on YouTube today, not on Facebook. Roll Tide rubber game today. Yep, big one between Ole Miss and Alabama. We'll certainly talk about that one. Armstrong on YouTube. Joe, I don't know much about cigarettes, but last night I felt like I needed one. What an incredible night of games in the SEC. Go Tigers. Yeah, it was just a fun night. James Gillum on YouTube again. That's Carolina's plan for Friday. Kimball goes 2 to 4 innings. Ty goes as far as he can. Kingston calls them his Friday night starters. Okay, fair enough. I kind of knew they had done that. I didn't realize it was so codified, so locked into kind of what they were doing right now. Okay, so fair. I thought it was just kind of that's the way it had played out for a while, but okay. And look, and it was effective. Clearly, Ty Good's a good, no pun intended, good arm. And then we saw that last night. Not the most electric stuff, but man, especially that breaking ball, like the high spin breaker that he's got. I mean, it's tough when he's really on. Carl again on YouTube. Oh yeah, I mentioned this yesterday. He says off topic, but the fan who took a home run ball off the head from Tommy White is okay. I did see that. Marucci got him a new glove and LSU a batting helmet and took a picture with Tommy Tanks. Yeah, I did see that. It was good to see that guy's doing all right. He cleared concussion protocol, I guess. Yeah, so yeah, good stuff there, and good on Marucci and LSU to kind of take care of that fan. It's kind of a cool deal. Nicholas Doherty on YouTube. Good little question here. If LSU wins around 11 to 13 SEC games, are they automatically in the tourney, or would they need to win 1 or 2 in Hoover? So if it's 11 or 12, I can just about guarantee you they're going to need to win 1 in Hoover, at least 1. That's typically the way it goes. You win 11 or 12 regular season SEC games. You need to not go 0-1 in Hoover, because LSU is going to end up in those. If they make it to Hoover, they're going to end up in those Tuesday games that are single elimination. So you can't go 0-1 there. If you win 13, we're having a different conversation. 13 is kind of where you can, okay, maybe you've already done enough. If they get to 13 games, I'm going to assume their RPI is going to improve. Right now, as we sit, it's 34. If that RPI gets into the 20s and you win 13 games, I'd feel pretty good. Yes. I can't guarantee anything. Obviously, I'm not on the committee. However, history suggests, and my podcast partner, Mark Etheridge, is better at having a handle on this than I am, because it's his favorite part of this gig. But you win 13 and your RPI in the 20s, there is a history of those teams making it in. Because if you only have 13 regular season wins, you have to have typically a really high RPI to offset that. So if they get 13, I feel pretty confident. 11 or 12, you got to do some work in Hoover. That's just kind of generally how it is. Tennyson Tipton on X, that's a fantastic name. It's going to take all 30 conference games to decide the West, huh? Yeah, kind of seems like that, because, I mean, A&M and Arkansas play that last weekend. So it kind of feels like that's what it's going to come down to. And those two have clearly separated, right? I mean, because State now, with the loss yesterday, State is now 5 back of Arkansas, 4 back of A&M. So yeah, it's really a 2-horse race right now in the West. Jordan Shields on YouTube. Bad day to be a Mizzou Tiger. Also, are those unis they wore yesterday the worst thing in baseball? Yeah, I mean, Tennessee sneaks by Mizzou. I mean, good job on the mound for Mizzou. I mean, holding Tennessee to 3 runs? Checking my scores here. Yeah, 3 runs. I mean, that's an achievement in and of itself. So they played well. Tennessee, though, kudos to them, showing the ability to, even at home in that environment, be able to win with pitching. So yeah, good on Tennessee there to be able to show they can win different ways. Mizzou's offense is not good. We know this, but to be able to win that way, I think, is a feather in their cap. I'm not a fan generally of Missouri's uniform sets, to be honest with you. I feel like they've lost the plot a little on those. I'm not a big uniform guy, I'm going to be honest with you. However, they used to have some kind of, when they used to be an Under Armour school. And when they were with Under Armour, which typically, I don't love Under Armour stuff, but about 2011 or 12, I want to say, they had some throwbacks as their regular uniform sets that were really nice. It was a cream and then a gray that just said Missouri just across the front of it. It was really kind of like a clean look that I liked a lot. And those went by the wayside, obviously, when they changed apparel providers. But yeah, I'm not a fan of, I understand it's the branding, but I'm really not a fan of Mizzou across the front, like a nickname for the school across the front. That seems strange to me. And I get that, like, technically Ole Miss is a nickname, but like that's so ingrained, right? So anyway, yeah, I'm just not a huge fan. I don't know if they're the worst thing in baseball, but they're not great. Last comment here before I flip back over and we talk player of the day. Sean Miller on YouTube. Some good defense in a relatively low-scoring A&M UGA game. last night that still somehow featured 6 home runs. That's totally fair. Like, it's a super low scoring game, lots of solo home runs, lots of solo. At one point, it was 2-2 with 4 solo home runs. Yeah, low scoring game there. I mean, but yeah, you get the home run, so it's just like that. That just kind of tells you that the pitchers did a good job keeping traffic off the bases relatively. I know there were some long innings early in that game, but generally speaking, keeping traffic off the bases ahead of those home runs. So yeah, I mean, if there's a little more traffic, the score there is a lot different than what it was. But as it was, I came away pretty impressed with the pitching. We'll get to that with pitcher of the day, but even for Georgia, Leighton Finley, I thought against that lineup did a pretty nice job managing the game. So, and helping set up Georgia for the rest of the weekend, because they didn't have to use as much bullpen as you feared they might against this A&M offense. All right, let's talk player of the day. And honestly, because it was such a pitching heavy day, not a lot of standout offensive performances, but we'll talk about the guys who stood out. Ted Burton in that win for A&M, 2 for 4, 2 home runs. Mark Etheridge, if you're an Aggie or if you're just interested in reading it, Mark last night was at the A&M Georgia game, wrote about it for the site. So head over to D1 Baseball and read about A&M's win if you're interested. He wrote about Burton and the depth of the order, which is something that we've talked about here on this show quite a bit. Just that, okay, yeah, you got Montgomery, Laviolette, Grahovac, but beyond that, like, they're pretty good 1 through 9, especially now that they've gotten like a guy like, Caden Sorrell hot. Ali Camarillo is on a long, like, or at least was last night. I assume he extended that streak, but last night was on a long on base streak. So there's depth. They've got guys who can do different things. It's not just a bunch of mashers. Mark wrote about all that. So if you're interested, go check that out. Will Furnace for Ole Miss in a 9-8 victory for Ole Miss. And again, a big win there. Ole Miss in a similar place to LSU, where it's like, just need to churn through as many wins as we can get here. And honestly, you flip back over and look, yeah, I mean, their RPI is 25. Ole Miss is, as of this morning. So Ole Miss is actually in even better shape than LSU with regards to that. And they're 1 game ahead in the standings also. But with the 25 RPI, you get to 13. You feel pretty decent about that. You still don't want to go 0-1 in Hoover, but the math is pretty clear for Ole Miss and LSU at this point, kind of where they need to get. Will Furnace, 4 for 5, 2 doubles and a home run. Luke Hill, 3 for 4 with a double and a walk. Justin LeBron for Alabama in that game. It was kind of the one offensive game we had of the night. So 4 of the 6 guys I'm mentioning here from that game, but Justin LeBron, 3 for 3 with a double and a home run. And Will Hodo, 3 for 5 with a double and a home run. But the player of the day is Blake Jackson for South Carolina. How could it not be? 3 for 5 with a double and 2 home runs, including the walk-off shot in the bottom of the 10th, a 2-run shot to turn a 5-4 deficit into a 6-5 victory. So Blake Jackson, the player of the day. We'll get to the pitcher of the day now, which is a much longer list, as you can imagine. So bear with me here as we really get into it. Drew Beam, Tennessee against Missouri, 7 1/3 innings, 6 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts. Continues to settle in early this season and even into SEC play. Drew Beam wasn't quite himself, but it does feel like he's rounding into form a little bit now, becoming more like himself. Being a little more consistent with his performances. Again, the Mizzou offense, not good. However, you'll take it. Hagen Smith, ho-hum again, 7 innings pitched, 2 hits, 1 unearned run, 1 walk, 11 strikeouts. Go look at his full season numbers, by the way. I saw it retweeted. Maybe it was the Arkansas team account, perhaps, but I think Kendall Rogers retweeted it, so you can maybe find it there. But the season-long numbers are just absurd, as you would expect them to be, just given that he's on this list literally. I think it might actually be true. I'm not going to go back and watch all of them again, but I'm pretty sure he's been on this list every single week. We've talked about him every single week. Pierce Coppola for Florida, not because this was like the most outstanding pitching outing you've ever seen, but when you consider how badly Florida needs it, and then secondly, where he's at in his injury recovery, he gave him 3 innings, 1 hit, 1 run, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. Really good outing. Was a big part of keeping Florida in that game against Arkansas, eventually a 2-1 Arkansas win. Another step forward, next week he throws, let's call it 4. Then we're looking at 5. I mean, by the time you get to Hoover, you maybe feel pretty confident that, hey, Pierce Coppola is a guy who could go out there and give us whatever we need, right? 6, 7, maybe even more, right? So a big step forward there. Ryan Prager, Texas A&M against Georgia, 6 innings pitched, 5 hits, 2 runs, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts. His opponent in that game, Leighton Finley, 5 hits, 3 runs, 5 hits, 5 innings, 3 hits. Here we go. 2 runs, 3 walks, 7 strikeouts. And again, those numbers might not necessarily pop to you, but when you consider A&M on the road on a windy day, I think you'll take that, certainly if you're Georgia. I mentioned Ty Good in relief. We saw the line earlier, but 5 innings pitched, 2 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. Again, Carolina probably doesn't win that game without him. Trey Pusser on the other side, Kentucky, 7 innings pitched, 4 hits, 1 run, 3 walks, 11 strikeouts. Pusser he wasn't even in the rotation to start the year. And I think he may not even be their Friday guy if not for the fact that he entered the rotation for Travis Smith. So that was Travis Smith's spot in the rotation. So he ended up kind of being the Friday guy just by chance, basically. But he has kind of taken to that role, honestly. He's not a traditional Friday guy in terms of stuff or pedigree, but he's been pretty doggone good. So another good outing for him. Also good on him to get through 7 innings. It was not easy for him early. Wasn't locating really particularly well early in that game. So got his pitch count a little elevated. So to get through 7 is a big deal. Gage Jump, LSU, I mentioned we'd talk about this. 7 innings pitched, 2 hits, no runs, no walks, 6 strikeouts, and a 5-0 win for LSU. That's 14 consecutive scoreless innings for Gage Jump. Sure, if you want to nitpick it, it was Mizzou last week. It was Auburn without Ike Irish last night. But still, and also an Auburn lineup without Ike Irish is still a pretty decent lineup. So I don't want to minimize that. I wonder if this is it's a little earlier than it happened last year, but I wonder if this is a little like, what we saw from Thatcher Hurd last year at LSU, where he was inconsistent for a long stretch of time and then just kind of got right, kind of at the right time of year and gave LSU what they needed. There's really been no doubting the stuff for Gage Jump. It's just kind of been inconsistent this season. And now we're 2 excellent outings in a row, not even just good, but excellent outings in a row. We'll see if he can continue on, but man, it really changes the complexion of this LSU team if you can have Gage Jump doing this or something like this every week with Luke Coleman in there as well. Suddenly that 1-2 is really, 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 really good. And it goes back to being one of the best 1-2 punches in the country, certainly in the SEC. And that's what we thought it would be coming into the year. And it just hadn't quite been that. Dylan Watts for Auburn, by the way, in that game. Talk about a team that just desperately needs some consistency on the mound. Dylan Watts, 5 2/3, 3 hits, 2 runs, no walks, 9 strikeouts. Wasn't enough on this day, but a good effort to at least give Auburn a chance to win that game as they went to the middle innings. But the pitcher of the day is Bryce Cunningham for Vanderbilt, a complete game shutout against Mississippi State. That's 9 innings, 2 hits, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. So not a big strikeout day either, which is interesting about that. So a lot of soft contact, a lot of managing the game. Because it's not like he had a lot of traffic. Sometimes those low strikeout games, it's like a lot of traffic and you roll some double play balls, but this wasn't that. It was controlling the game without striking anybody out or very few guys out. So impressive stuff there. We talked about that series as being a separation series. They were both 10-8 coming into the weekend. Vanderbilt continues to put together. It's been up and down and a bit of a roller coaster, but continues to work towards being a host again. RPI is down to 17 as of this morning. Still probably would like to be a few spots higher to feel really good about that. But that was obviously a big step forward there. Cal Steven for State didn't pitch poorly. Again, pitched well enough to win. It's a 4-0 win, so it's not like it was any sort of blowout there. So if for State, you still feel good about what Cal Steven gives you. Another good outing for him. It just on this day, Bryce Cunningham did a little bit more. Flip over to the comments here. Carl on YouTube mentions Christian Little did a nice job last night in relief, and yeah, that's another good call. I mean, and it's a similar conversation to the ones that I was having last year. I was getting asked a lot on Baton Rouge radio and by LSU fans, like, what do we do with Thatcher Hurd and Christian Little? And Christian Little wasn't really part of the mix as they got into the postseason, but those arms are too good to not have a role, right? Like you need to find a role for them. I mean, Christian Little has been in the SEC for a long time at this point. He's got good stuff. The best version of LSU involves him having a role somewhere. Doesn't mean it has to be a super high leverage role. Doesn't mean it has to he has to be the dude that we thought he was going to be coming into college. I think it took us a long time to kind of come to terms with the fact that he probably just wasn't going to be the guy we thought he was going to be coming out of high school when he was the number one rated recruit in his class and graduated early and all that stuff. Like we're past that, right? But being who he is good enough if he pitches well. And so that's kind of, I think, where this LSU team is trying to get him, and he can be a weapon. And like I said, the best version of them involves him giving them something. Okay, let's wrap up here. Game of the day Saturday. I'm looking at Bama and Ole Miss. Zane Adams with a TBA, and if I have not seen, I have to admit I haven't looked today necessarily. So if Ole Miss has already announced a starter in that, I've not seen it. Doesn't mean they haven't though. I was listed as Zane Adams in a TBA. Again, if Ole Miss wins this game, I think we're starting to have a different conversation. That would get Ole Miss to 8 SEC wins. They'd be 8-13, which isn't great, but the RPI would be in good shape. They just need to kind of pick up 5 or 6 wins the last few weeks of the season, plus Hoover, to be in position to maybe be a regional team. It's going to be a tightrope walk. I'm not going to lie to you about that. But if they win the game today, you feel cautiously optimistic about the direction they're heading. And for Alabama, I mean, kind of the same thing. They're on a little bit of a different situation. They're already at 8 wins. Their RPI is top 20. So I've said this before. I'll say it again. It's not that different from Georgia, where the RPI is really good. So if they win this series and put some things together, like I'm not predicting Alabama is going to get there. I don't think they will. But like hosting is not totally out of the realm of possibility for them if they really go on a heater here. Again, I'm not predicting that, but it is something that kind of has an outside chance of happening. But if you're Alabama more than anything else, having that really high RPI, as we've talked about with LSU and with Ole Miss, does give them a little bit of cushion to where, okay, we don't have to get to 14 necessarily, 14 SEC wins in the regular season. We can maybe just get 5 more from today on and feel pretty good about it. So big game there, rubber game between those two teams in Oxford. That one is set for 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. local there. Heads up, some double headers in the league today. Florida, Arkansas wrapping up their series with a doubleheader. Georgia, Texas A&M wrapping up their series with a doubleheader. So hopefully those doubleheaders happen. We get those series in, and then hopefully the weather isn't too disruptive tomorrow with the Sunday games we'll end up having left over. All right, folks, that is going to do it for this edition of Weekend Waypoints. Thank you again for joining me. Thank you for joining me all season long. This has been a lot of fun. We're going to keep rolling through. I'll be honest with you, I have to give some thought to what the schedule will be once we get to once we get to Hoover. Sorry, I was distracted. Jeremy Scott on YouTube coming back says they made a run last year. They can do the same this year, talking about Alabama. And he's right. They did get hot, late last year is about this time. They got scalding hot and they ended up hosting. So yeah, it's on the table. I was saying, I have to give some thought to what the schedule will be like once we get to Hoover, given that, games Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, like the whole weekend part of it is not necessarily the same. So I have to decide if I'll go that week or if I'll wait to the weekend. I don't know. I'd like to involve Mark in this a little bit too, because once we get to Hoover, we kind of alternate games so that we're not both just sitting there all day and, give ourselves something of a break from the all day baseball. So we kind of alternate. So we'll figure it out. But I say all that to say I appreciate you guys joining me all the way this season. We will continue all the way through the College World Series. We'll be doing some version of this all the way through the College World Series. So I appreciate you guys being along for the ride. Sean Miller on YouTube, 4 waypoints a day from Hoover. Yeah, we'll do one before every game. That's the way we'll do it. No, that is not happening. But thank you for your enthusiasm, Sean. I appreciate it. Make sure to check out plainscoffee.com. Use the code baseball for 10% off your order. You get free shipping on it. I'm not sure what else you would need to go ahead and make the leap if you're looking for freshly roasted coffee beans from the heart of SEC country. check out plainscoffee.com. All right, folks, that's it. Enjoy the baseball. I will talk to you guys tomorrow morning with Sunday's edition of Weekend Waypoints.